Today is Wednesday, May 8th. My name is Michelle S. I'm a recovered Al-Anon, and I'll be leading this meeting. We want to welcome everyone to our Al-Anon Big Book Recovery meeting. This is a step speaker meeting that meets every Wednesday night at 5:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time or 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We will be studying the 12 steps by using the precise instructions out of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous as they relate to us as Al-Anons. Let's get our meeting started. This is the original AA preamble written by the AA Grapevine describing the fellowship in 1940. We study the preamble with an open mind and open heart to consider how it applies to Al-Anon. This helps us to stay focused on the message of recovery the pioneers intended while observing the traditions and actions. Through the actions taken based on the instructions of the basic text, we comprehend what the pioneers meant when they described the membership of AA, which is that they worked a program of recovery and they no longer drank. In our case, we no longer obsessed over the alcoholic. Through continuous action and study of these principles, the understanding of the value of the original preamble reveals itself. We ask for your humble consideration of our sincere admiration of the pioneers of Alcoholics Anonymous. The simple hope is that we of Al-Anon will grow in the same clarity and unity that birthed the original 12-step fellowship, because without them, after all, none of us would be here. The original AA preamble, we are gathered here because we are faced with the fact that we are powerless over alcohol and unable to do anything about it without the help of a power greater than ourselves. We feel that each person's religious view, if any, are his own affair. The simple purpose of the program of Alcoholics Anonymous is to show what may be done to enlist the aid of a power greater than themselves, regardless of what our individual conception of that power might be. In order to form a habit of depending upon and referring all we do to that power, we must first apply ourselves with some diligence. By often repeating these acts, they become habitual, and the help rendered becomes natural to us. We have come to know that as alcoholics, we suffer from a serious disease for which medicine has no cure. Our condition may be the result of an allergy which makes us different from other people. It has never been permanently cured by any treatment with which we are familiar. The only relief we have to offer is absolute abstinence, the second meaning of AA. There are no dues or fees. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. Each member squares his debt by helping others to recover. An Alcoholics Anonymous member is an alcoholic who, through the application of an adherence to the AA program, has forsworn the use of any and all alcoholic beverages in any form. The moment he takes so much as one drop of beer, wine, spirits, or any other liquid containing alcohol, he automatically loses all status as a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. Alcoholics Anonymous is not interested in sobering up drunks who are not sincere in their desire to stay sober for all time. Not being reformers, we offer our experience only to those who want it. We have a way out on which we can absolutely agree and on which we can join in harmonious action. Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our program. Those who do not recover are people who will not or simply cannot give themselves to this program. Now, you may like our program, or you may not, but the simple fact remains that it works, and we believe is our only chance to recover. There is a vast amount of fun included in the AA fellowship. Some people might be shocked at our seemingly worldlessness and levity, but just underneath there lies a deadly earnestness and full realization that we must put first things first, and with us, the first thing is the solution to our alcohol problem. To drink is to die. Faith must work 24 hours a day in and through us, or we perish. In order to set the tone for this meeting, I ask we bow our heads in a few moments of silent prayer and meditation, followed by the serenity prayer. And we'll say that again. And if you would like to join me in the prayer, just hit *6 to unmute. Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Thy will, not mine, be done.
Thy will, not mine, be done.
I wish to remind you that whatever is said at this meeting expresses our own individual opinions as of today and as up to this moment. We do not speak for AA as a whole, and you are free to agree or disagree as you see fit. In fact, it is suggested that you pay no attention to anything which might not be reconciled with what is in the AA Big Book. If you don't have a big book, it is time you bought one. Read it, study it, live it, follow the directions in it, and learn what it means to be an AA. A sponsor is anyone who has had a psychic change as a result of working the steps and has the willingness to work with others. For those looking for a sponsor to guide them through the steps, please stay tuned. Have your pens ready to record phone numbers immediately after the meeting. Each Al-Anon group ought to be a spiritual entity having but one primary purpose, that of carrying the message to the Al-Anon who still suffers. This is our primary spiritual aim. Our job as a group is to provide people with a place to learn about and work the steps. It has been our experience that working the steps consistently provides us with a better, saner life. We consider all else to be an outside issue. This includes personal problems. The proper venue for sharing such problems is with a sponsor. This is, after all, where real recovery takes place in working the steps with a sponsor. We are just so glad we are all here. And we are all here because we are not all there. There will be a period of fellowship after the meeting. If you have questions, if you need a sponsor, if you need to check in or get current, or if you want to discuss other literature, please stick around for the fellowship. That would be a better time for these subjects. So last week, the first Wednesday of the month, I covered steps 1 through 3. And I'll review steps 1 through 3. We will review them. And then I'm going to cover this week steps 4 through 6. So if you have a big book, go ahead and grab it. If not, you can always access one online for free at aa.org. So if we open up our book, and I'm reading from the 4th edition, on that very title page, it says, Alcoholics Anonymous, the story of how many thousands of men and women have recovered from alcoholism. So right there in the very first page, we get our first promise. Now, we're not alcoholics, or maybe we are, but this is an Al-Anon meeting. So if you're wondering why we're studying, from the AA Big Book, it's to learn about the disease of our loved one, but also our own obsession of the mind over the alcoholic, what they're doing, their program. And so what this first sentence is telling us is that we can get relief, we can get recovered from that obsession of the mind so that we can have peace and sanity in our lives regardless of what is going on around us. That's what this program offers us, peace and sanity, which is something that, we may not have had in a long time. Let's move on to the preface, which is on page XI or Roman numeral 11. It says, because this book has become the basic text for our society and has helped such large numbers of alcoholic men and women to recovery, there exists strong sentiment against any radical changes being made to it. So they refer to this book as a textbook. That means that we're meant to study it. The more we study it, the more we are going to understand the steps And the more we're going to understand the illness that our loved one or friend has. The other thing that I want to mention about this paragraph is the first 164 pages are going to lay out exactly how you get recovered. They're going to start with step 1 and go through step 12. They're going to lay out in order exactly what we need to do. The other pages afterwards were written, the personal stories were written so that another alcoholic could look at that and say, hey, yeah, I recognize that. That's me. That's my story. Because we're meant to share our story. We're meant to share our experience. We're meant to take this out into our communities and help another suffering Al-Anon, through this book. Forward to the first edition, page XIII, or Roman numeral 13, shows we of Alcoholics Anonymous are more than 100 men and women who have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. To show other alcoholics precisely how we have recovered is the main purpose of this book. For them, we hope these pages will prove so convincing that no further authentication will be necessary. We think this account of our experiences will help everyone to better understand the alcoholic. Many do not comprehend that the alcoholic is a very sick person, and besides, we are sure that our way of living has its advantages for all. So it says, have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. So they're telling us there what the problem is. So it's not that we or our loved one has a problem with alcohol. They have a hopeless state of mind and body, as we do as well. And so they're telling us right there what our problem is. And what is great about this paragraph is what they're saying is that no matter how sick you are, you can get recovered. It says in that last sentence, I just want to point out, and besides, we're sure that our way of living has its advantages for all. Al-Anon was born out of the AA program. And there are, I think, well over 200 other 12-step programs that use this AA Big Book as their basic text. All right, so let's talk about step 1. And in order to understand what our problem is, we have to understand what the problem actually is if we're going to apply the right solution. So in the doctor's opinion on page XXVIII, or Roman numeral 28, it's the only chapter in this book that was not written by an alcoholic. This book was written by alcoholics for alcoholics. It does work for other 12-step programs, and we're meant to take our unique experiences as Al-Anons into our communities and help other suffering Al-Anons. And so Dr. Silkworth wrote this chapter, and he noted that he's talking about a certain type of alcoholic that he experienced that just kept coming back into the hospital and, would get dried out and swear they were going to never drink again, and then they'd be drinking again once they were discharged in a pretty short time. So he's giving his opinion on what he thinks the problem is with these chronic types. It says, we believe and so suggested a few years ago that the action of alcohol on these chronic alcoholics is a manifestation of an allergy, that the phenomenon of craving is limited to this class and never occurs in the average temperate drinker. These allergic types can never safely use alcohol in any form. So alcoholics do have an addiction to a substance. Their body does not metastasize alcohol like other people. Now, we don't have an allergy to a substance, but what we have is an obsession of the mind that if we can control the alcoholic and make sure they're working their program and follow them around and make sure they're doing everything correctly, then, everything's going to be right in our home. We're not going to be embarrassed in public. all that kind of thing. We have an obsession with trying to control the alcoholic. And it doesn't really just end there. It tends to bleed into other areas in our lives where we have trouble giving up controlling things like work or relationships with our other family members or friends. It says frothy emotional appeal seldom suffices. The message which can interest and hold these alcoholic people must have depth and weight. In nearly all cases, their ideals must be grounded in a power greater than themselves if they are to recreate their lives. So for us, frothy emotional appeal might look like, why don't you go get a hobby or get a part-time job or take up some new activity or interest or get involved in volunteer work. And, where that might work for lots of people, where they can just go and, maybe occupy their mind and not think about the alcoholic and kind of let it go. For us, it tells us what we need here, and we need a message that has depth and weight. And what they're talking about is another person who has read and studied this book and is going to walk us through the steps. And they're telling us that our ideals are going to have to be grounded in a power greater than themselves, because what we have been doing hasn't been working, and we're going to have to recreate our lives. That means we're going to have to do things very differently. It says men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. This sensation is so elusive that while they admit it is injurious, they cannot after a time differentiate the truth from the false. To them, their alcoholic life seems the only normal one. They are restless, irritable, and discontented unless they can again experience the sense of ease and comfort that comes at once by taking a few drinks which they see others taking with impunity. After they have succumbed to the desire again, as so many do, and the phenomenon of craving develops, they pass through the well-known stages of the spree, emerging remorseful with a firm resolution not to drink again. This is repeated over and over unless this person can experience an entire psychic change. There's very little hope of his recovery. So for us, we might make a firm resolution that, I'm going to just leave this person alone. I'm not going to check up on them. I'm not going to go through their phone. I'm not going to, keep track of what they're drinking and what they're eating and what they're doing. I'm just going to worry about myself for once. And, we might be able to do that for a while, but eventually what happens is we're not going to be able to help ourselves, and we're going to go back to doing what we've always done, which is, looking over that person's shoulder and keeping tabs on them. And we might swear we're never going to do this again. After the last time, it didn't work out so well. We got in a huge fight. I'm never doing that again. But yet we make that firm resolution, and then we can't help ourselves. We start the cycle all over again. It says once a psychic change has occurred, the very same person who seemed doomed, who had so many problems he despaired of ever solving them, suddenly finds himself easily able to control his desire for alcohol, the only effort necessary being it required to follow a few simple rules. So they're talking about the 12 steps there, and they don't mean that the steps are easy. They're not easy. You have to work them, but they're not complicated to understand. They're pretty straightforward. On page 23, it says these observations would be academic and pointless if our friend never took the first drink, thereby setting the terrible cycle in motion. Therefore, the main problem of the alcoholic centers in his mind rather than his body. And we know that our, alcoholism have a body and a mind component to their illness. We have a mind component to our illness. And that is our problem, how we think. Page 24, it says the fact is that most alcoholics, for reasons yet obscure, have lost the power of choice in drink. Our so-called willpower becomes practically non-existent. We are unable at certain times to bring into consciousness with sufficient force the memory of the suffering and humiliation of even a week or a month ago. We were without defense against the first drink. So for us, the power of choice means, an alcoholic, what they're talking about is someone who says, I'm never going to drink again. And they don't drink for like let's say a week. And, the alcohol's out of their system. They're not craving it, but even though they know they shouldn't take another drink, they go ahead and do it anyway. That's the loss of power of choice, that our mind tells us, their mind tells them to drink. And drinking is going to be the answer to their problems when they don't want to do so. For us, obsessing over that alcoholic and what they're doing is our obsession of the mind. It's how we've lost the power of choice in being able to not do that. If you've ever sworn off and said, I'm just not going to keep tabs on them anymore, and then gone back and done it anyway, that's what they're talking about. When this sort of thinking is fully established in an individual with alcoholic tendencies, he has probably placed himself beyond human aid. And unless lost out, may die or go permanently insane. These stark and ugly facts have been confirmed by legions of alcoholics throughout history. So, for an alcoholic, if they've crossed that point of no return, they're probably not going to go back and just all of a sudden one day be a normal drinker. They're probably always going to have this illness. And the same can be true for us. If we didn't have a program of recovery, and even if we said, okay, my answer is, I just don't have any alcoholics in my life, it might work well for a while, but we're going to go back to trying to control the people and things in our lives. And so that step one, and the steps are on page 59, it says we admitted we were powerless over alcohol and that our lives had become unmanaged. For us, we're powerless over the alcoholic, and that our life has become unmanageable. And what they mean by that is unmanageable by us, meaning, we're trying to control everybody around us and it's not working. And, with step one, it's usually something that we work before we come to program. So we're either done trying to keep tabs and control the alcoholic, or we're not. And we have to be ready to be done with that. So step one, I always say, is kind of the step that we have to be all in. The second step that we're going to get into now, and I'm sorry about that, I had to let my dog in. He was barking outside. So step two is that we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity, and we're going to talk about why that is. So on page 25, if you are as seriously alcoholic as we were, we believe there's no middle of the road solution. We were in a position where life was becoming impossible, and if we had passed into the region from which there is no return to human aid, we had but two alternatives. One was to go on to the bitter end, blotting out the consciousness of our intolerable situation as best we could, and the other is to accept spiritual help. So middle of the road solution, that means if we're driving ourselves and other people around us crazy, then we need to work the steps, and we need to work them in order. We don't get to say, I don't want to work step 5 or 9 or 12. I'm just going to do this, because it's not going to work. On page 43, it says, once more, the alcoholic at certain times has no mental defense against the first drink. Except in a few rare cases, neither he nor any human being can provide such a defense. His defense must come from a higher power. So where the alcoholic is powerless to stop drinking, okay, and they need a higher power to stop drinking, if we cannot stop thinking about the alcoholic and what they're doing, we have that same hopelessness. And if we can't do that on our own, we can't do that through our own self-will, then we also need a higher power to do that for us. Page 45 says, lack of power, that was our dilemma. We had to find a power by which we could live, and it had to be a power greater than ourselves. Obviously, but where and how are we to find this power? Well, that's exactly what this book is about. Its main object is to enable you to find a power greater than yourself, which is going to solve your problems. So this book is going to show us how to get connected to our higher power, which is going to solve our problems. And the more we read and study this book, the more we work the steps, the more we're going to understand the program and how it works. And the closer we're going to get to our higher power. And the closer we get to our higher power, the easier life gets. So on page 47, it says we needed to ask ourselves but one short question: do I now believe, or am I even willing to believe, that there is a power greater than myself? As soon as a man can say that he does believe or is willing to believe, we emphatically assure him that he is on his way. It has been repeatedly proven among us that upon this simple cornerstone, a wonderfully effective spiritual structure can be built. So to get started, you only need a little bit of willingness to believe. You don't have to have 100% faith in a higher power. You don't even have to believe in a higher power. That's going to come with time. But to get started, because this is not a religious program, it's a spiritual program. Religion is considered an outside issue. You just need to have that little bit of willingness, like, hey, I see my sponsor has some peace and sanity in her life. I would like that. That's all you need to get started. Step 3 is that we made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. So steps 1, 2, and 3 are decision steps, meaning we're just making a decision. We're not going to know how to do that. We're going to learn how to do that through working the steps. And steps 4 through 12 are action steps. We get recovered through steps 1 through 9. And we stay recovered and grow in our program by working steps 10, 11, and 12. Because this isn't, there's no cure for what we have. We can't, work the 12 steps and then we get a little certificate and we're done. We have to continue to work this every day. So let's start getting into step 4 here. Let's go to page 62. It says, this is the how and why of it. First of all, we had to quit playing God. It didn't work. Next, we decided that hereafter in this drama of life, God was going to be our director. He is the principal. We are His agents. He is the Father and we are His children. Most good ideas are simple, and this concept was the keystone of the new and triumphant arc through which we pass to freedom. So basically, we're going to learn each day how to fire ourselves and to put, God in charge instead. On page 63, it says, when we sincerely took such a position, all sorts of remarkable things followed. We had a new employer. Being all-powerful, He provided what we needed if we kept close to Him and performed His work well. Established on such a footing, we became less and less interested in ourselves, our little plans and designs. More and more, we became interested in seeing what we could contribute to life. As we felt newer power flow in, as we enjoyed peace of mind, and as we discovered we could face life successfully, as we became conscious of His presence, we began to lose our fear of today, tomorrow, or the hereafter. We were reborn. So when we're running around trying to, manage the alcoholic because we don't want to be embarrassed by them, we're worried about what's going to happen. We're fearful that they're going to end up in jail and, we're going to have to bail them out. We're worried about the inconvenience that they're going to cause in our life. So we, had been trying to make sure that they were on the straight and narrow so that it made our life easier. And what we're going to learn to do is lean away from that and lean into more of helping others and seeing, like it says, what we can contribute to life. And when we do that, we'll find we're not as exhausted because it's exhausting chasing someone around all the time. And life is going to get easier, because we're focusing on what our right next step is. And we're not focusing on what everybody else is doing. So on page 62, it says selfishness, self-centeredness. That we think is the root of our troubles, driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity. We step on the toes of our fellows and they retaliate. Sometimes they hurt us seemingly without provocation, but we invariably find that at some time in the past we have made decisions based on self which later placed us in a position to be hurt. So here we're going to start to see how maybe we played a role in the things that happened in our lives, in our homes. That we had a role in the things that were going on. That we just weren't necessarily just some hapless victim, that we also have selfishness, fear, anger, resentment, all those things. Let's move on to page 63 and 64. Next, we launched on a course of vigorous action, the first step of which is a personal house cleaning, which many of us have never attempted. Though our decision was a vital and crucial step, it could have little permanent effect unless at once followed by a strenuous effort to face and be rid of the things in ourselves which have been blocking us off. Our liquor was but a symptom. We had to get down to causes and conditions. So first of all, it says we go on a course of vigorous action. That means we start working. We start working our fourth step. We start looking at the things that are blocking us off from God. Because the first three steps, that's our spiritual experience. And if that were enough for me to stop trying to, control the things around me and the people around me, then going to church probably would have worked. But I'm the type of person that needs a plan of action. The spiritual experience isn't enough for me, because without a plan of action, I'm going to go right back to where I was. Okay, so on page 64, it says, a business that takes no regular inventory will usually go broke. Taking a commercial inventory is a fact-finding and a fact-facing process. It is an effort to discover the truth about the stock in trade. One object is to disclose damaged or unsaleable goods, to get rid of them promptly and without regret. If the owner of the business is to be successful, he cannot fool himself about values. So if you had a business, you would not keep old, outdated things that nobody wants on the shelf, right? Because it's taking up space where something that is more valuable and can help your business would be. So what they're asking us to do here in step 4, and step 4 is made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. And again, when we do this, we're not doing this alone. We're doing this with the help of our sponsor. And we have the big book too, which has all the directions in how to do this. We're going to lay out the things about ourselves that we need to address that's cutting us off from God. We're not writing a memoir. Instead, it's a fact-finding, fact-facing process. So we keep it short and sweet, to the point, and we don't go on and on and on with the story. We're not writing a memoir. We're looking for what role we played in the problems in our life. So if you go down, it says resentment is the number one offender. It destroys more alcoholics than anything else. In dealing with resentment, we set them on paper. We listed people, institutions, or principles with whom we were angry. We asked ourselves why we were angry. In most cases, it was found that our self-esteem, our pocketbooks, our ambition, our personal relationships, including sex, were hurt or threatened. So we were sore. We were burned up. We always start a step 4 with resentment. And the reason is because we always know who we're mad at. And we always know why we're mad at them. And it also, because it destroys more alcoholics than anything else. It also destroys more Al-Anons than anything else. Because think about it, if you sit there stewing in resentment, there isn't room for anything else in your head. It just takes up so much space. You can't hear God when you're just angry and you come home and you sit in your chair and stew about, what this person is doing. There's no freedom in that. There's no room for God in that. So we start with the resentment. I'm just going to look at the book here and see. So if you look on page 65, it gives a example of a 4th step. And you can see here, he keeps it very short and sweet. He says, I'm resentful at Mr. Brown. The cause is the attention to my wife. And what does this affect? It affects my sex relations, my self-esteem. I'm mad because he told my wife of my mister. So, notice how he's keeping it short and sweet here. He's not going on and on about how awful Mr. Brown is. He's just saying, this is why I don't like him. Because sometimes when we go on and on, it's another way that we focus too much on ourselves. So on page 66, it says, it is plain that a life which includes deep resentment leads only to futility and unhappiness. To the precise extent that we permit these, do we squander the hours that might have been worthwhile. But with the alcoholic whose hope is the maintenance and growth of a spiritual experience, this business of resentment is infinitely grave. We found that it is fatal, for when harboring such feelings, we shut ourselves off from the sunlight of the spirit. The insanity of alcohol returns and we drink again, and with us for to drink is to die. If we were to live, we had to be free of anger. The grouch and the brainstorm were not for us. They may be the dubious luxury of normal men, but for alcoholics, they're poison. And they're poison for us, too. We can't sit around and stew about stuff because we will just continue to spiral. We can't sit around and gossip about people or do certain things that maybe people who don't have the same issues that we do can do. It's not a luxury that we have because it takes us to a whole new level. Once you have done, and again, we go through our life and we look for, all the let me read what it says here on the bottom of page 65. It says, we went back through our lives. Nothing counted but thoroughness and honesty. When we first finished, we considered it carefully. The first thing apparent was that this world and its people were often quite wrong. To conclude that others were wrong was as far as most of us got. So that's an important paragraph because sometimes as Al-Anons we tend to think it's always the other person. Like if I didn't have an alcoholic living in my house, it would be so much more peaceful, which may be true on a certain level. However, it's not really about the alcoholic. It's simply how we think. And we can get rid of the alcoholic, but we're still going to do the same things. The usual outcome was that people continued to wrong us and we stayed sore. Sometimes it was remorse and then we were sore at ourselves, but the more we fought and tried to have our own way, the worse matters got. As in war, the victor only seemed to win. Our moments of triumph were short-lived. So going down to page 67, the second part, and it's on page 67 and 68, the next part of the inventory is fear. Notice the word fear is bracketed alongside the difficulties with Mr. Brown and Mr. Jones, the employer and his wife. This short word somehow touches about every aspect of our lives. It was an evil and corroding thread. The fabric of our existence was shot through with it. It set in motion trains of circumstances which brought us misfortunes we felt we didn't deserve. But did we not ourselves set the ball rolling? Sometimes we think fear ought to be classified with stealing. It causes more trouble. So the constant worrying, are they going to make it home? Are they going to have an accident? Are they going to hurt someone else? Are we going to have enough money to pay the bills? All those sorts of things are fears, and they're normal fears. But what we tend to do is think that those fears can be erased if everybody just follows our plan and does what we want them to do. We reviewed our fears thoroughly. We put them on paper. Even though we had no resentment in connection with them, we asked ourselves why we had them. Wasn't it because self-reliance failed us? Self-reliance was good as far as it went, but it didn't go far enough. Some of us once had great self-confidence, but it didn't fully resolve the fear problem or any other. When it made us cocky, it was worse. So we tend to think that we know the right answer for everything, and we don't always know. And, learning to step back and allowing the alcoholic to make their own mistakes and, it's part of their process. We don't want to get involved in keeping them from reaching their rock bottom, because we're not helping them. We're not, they need to reach their own rock bottom and decide to get help. We can't do that for other people. And we're constantly trying to run after and clean up after them. We're just prolonging that. We're just making it worse. And we're doing it for ourselves, right? We're doing it because we don't want to be inconvenienced by their behavior or have to worry about where the mortgage or rent is coming from, or have to worry about our car or whatever. On page 69, it says, in this way we try to shape a sane and sound ideal for our future sex life. So the third part of the inventory is the sex conduct. We subjected each relation to this test. Was it selfish or not? We asked God to mold our ideals and help us live up to them. We remember always that our sex powers were God-given and therefore neither to be used lightly or selfishly, nor to be despised or loathed. So we're looking for, how do we hurt other people in romantic relationships? So it's not always about sex, but, it could be that we wanted to make, the person was off getting drunk at the bar and we felt ignored, so we flirted with someone to make him jealous, or we would use sex to, hey, if you just don't drink tonight, I'll, do whatever. So we're looking at the way that we were selfish with our God-given sex powers. And then in step 5, we admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. So our sponsor is going to help us with step 5. And we're fortunate enough that we have many recovered sponsors that are going to help us to work through these steps and see when we can't see our own selfishness or our own fear, or wrongs that we've caused others. They're going to help us see that, because it takes a while for that to clear. Let's move on to page 72. It says, this is perhaps difficult, especially discussing our defects with another person. We think we have done well enough at admitting these things to ourselves. There is no doubt about that. In actual practice, we usually find a solitary self-appraisal insufficient. Many of us thought it necessary to go much further. We will be more reconciled to discussing ourselves with another person when we see good reason why we should do so. The best reason first, if we skip this vital step, we may not overcome drinking. So the wonderful thing about doing this with another, Al-Anon is that they've been through it. There's probably nothing that we're going to say to them that they haven't heard or experienced. It's an important step, and it's where, when we get recovered, we're in a unique position to help someone through these steps because we've been there. All right. It says, this is perhaps difficult, and especially discussing our defects with another person. We think we have done well enough in admitting these things to ourselves. There is doubt about that. In actual practice, we usually find a solitary self-appraisal insufficient. Many of us thought it necessary to go much. Oh, did I already read this? It says, I'm sorry. Oh, no, I didn't read this. We will be more reconciled to discussing ourselves with another person when we see good reason. The first, I guess the script has us repeating it. I'm sorry. So time and time, newcomers have tried to keep themselves certain facts about their lives. Trying to avoid this humbling experience, they may have turned to easier methods. Almost invariably, they got drunk. Having persevered with the rest of the program, they wondered why they fell. We think the reason is they never completed their housekeeping. They took inventory all right, but hung on to some of the worst items in stock. They only thought they lost their egotism and fear. They only thought they had humbled themselves, but they had not learned enough of humility, fearlessness, and honesty in the sense we find it necessary until they told someone else all their life story. So, in the past we've said, you know what, I'm just going to ignore this because I'm just not going to do it again. Or I'm going to forget about these things. But the thing of it is we can't. Those things continue to eat at us. We have to discuss them with the sponsor, and we have to take responsibility for them, and then we can move on. So on page 73, it says, more than most people, the alcoholic leads a double life. He is very much the actor. To the outer world, he presents his stage. This is the one he likes fellows to see. He wants to enjoy a certain reputation, but knows in his heart he doesn't deserve it. I would even go as far to say the Al-Anon is really good at leading a double life. We're really good at making it seem like everything is fine at our house. We don't want anybody to know what's going on. We want everybody to think everything's fine, and we want to hide that, because we're embarrassed. And that sort of thing is what harms us. So when we work our fifth step with our sponsor, when we're done, we take an hour or so to ourselves. It says returning home. On page 75, it says returning home, we find a place where we can be quiet for an hour, carefully reviewing what we have done. So we go over everything that we've talked about with our sponsor, everything that we have done, making sure that, we didn't miss anything. We didn't leave anything out because, this is the cornerstone of, our program. It says returning home, we find a place where we can be quiet for an hour, carefully reviewing what we have done. We thank God from the bottom of our heart that we know him better. Taking this book down from our shelf, we turn to the page which contains the 12 steps, carefully reading the first 5 proposals. We ask if we omitted anything, for you were building an ark through which we shall walk a free man at last. Is our work solid so far? Are the stones properly in place? Have we skimped on the cement put into the foundation? Have we tried to make mortar without sand? So it's important that we understand that this is the foundation of our program, so we want to do a thorough job. On page 76, it says, if we can answer to our satisfaction, we then look at step 6. We have emphasized willingness as being indispensable. Are we now ready to let God remove from us all the things which we have admitted are objectionable? Can he take them all, every one? If we still cling to something, we will not let go. We ask God to help us be willing. So there's actually a lot in this paragraph. So there's a difference. Now, when you work your fifth step with your sponsor, You're probably going to feel some, relief at the end. I know I did. And it doesn't mean that you're not going to have some resentments or that you're not going to know how to let go of those. We're going to learn how to do that. But there's a distinct difference between someone who is like, look, I want to learn to let go of these resentments. I don't want to carry this stuff around anymore. I'm done. And someone who feels really justified and right in their anger and doesn't want to let go. If you're still holding on to something and you don't want to let go, you still want to be angry, it tells us what we need to do, which is that we ask God to help us be willing. We pray for that willingness to let that stuff go. Because holding on to that anger and resentment doesn't serve us. So those are steps 1 through 6. Next week, we're going to cover steps 7, 8, and 9. So let's get ready to close here. It says, 7th tradition, every group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. This group does not have a payment structure in place and currently requires no overhead expenses. If you would like to fulfill Tradition 7, please direct contributions directly to the Al-Anon World Service Office by visiting alanon.org. For questions about this meeting, if you are looking for a sponsor, please send them to Al-Anon Big Book Recovery at Gmail. Again, that's Al-Anon Big Book Recovery at Gmail. Recordings can be accessed on YouTube by searching at Al-Anon Step Speaker in the YouTube search box. If you are interested in other Al-Anon meetings that follow the Big Book, please visit AlanonBigBookSolutionGroup.org. So on page 164, it says, our book is meant to be suggestive only. We realize we know only a little. God will constantly disclose more to you and to us. Ask him in your morning meditation what you can do each day for the man who is still sick. The answers will come if your own house is in order, but you obviously cannot transmit something you haven't got. See to it that your relationship with him is right, and great events will come to pass for you and for countless others. This is the great fact for us. Abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to him and your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past. Give freely of what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and you will surely meet some of us as you trudge the road of happy destiny. May God bless you and keep you until then. Now let's have a moment of silence for the Al-Anon who still suffers, followed by the Lord's Prayer, or a prayer of your own choosing said in silence. Who loves us and keeps us sane. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses. We forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. All right, I'm going to turn the recording off.